Hello, friends, fans. Welcome to Goshen Theater Drama Club Table Talks Season 2, Episode 1, the season premiere. After last season's cliffhanger ending, we're back to resolve all of your unanswered questions from Season 1. We have a lot of really great plans for Season 2. We're bringing back some of our special guests from last season, going to check in with them. We've got some possibly some really neat things planned in the future, depending on when things open up and how things go. And obviously, we have our 2021 Goshen Theater Drama Club happening this summer in person. We're going to be announcing those official dates at the end of today's video. So, either fast forward to if you just can't wait to find out, fast forward to the end or stick with us as we talk today. Our episode is the topic of our episode is our collegiate experiences and transformative moments, positive or negative. A lot of emphasis in collegiate programs is on breaking you down so that they can rebuild your gifts. And some professors are really great at inspiring you to become better. And some professors in our lives have not been that great. So we're going to talk about some of those experiences with you guys here today, maybe talk a little bit about self-advocacy, but then also the importance of being humble and self-evaluating. So it's going to be a very deep episode. My favorite ones. I love it. Joining us today, obviously, are season regulars, Miss Katie Barnes. Miss Katie, how are you today?
I'm good. Glad to be back.
Aren't you?
Yes.
Oh,
it gives me purpose throughout the week again.
That's wonderful. And Akira Watanabe live from Gifu, Japan. Akira, how are you?
I'm good. I'm doing great.
The burning question everybody wants to know, Akira. It's 11 a.m. in Indiana. What time is it in Gifu, Japan?
12 in the midnight. I have such a high energy.
Well, thank you for joining us in the wee small hours of the morning.
Thanks for having me.
Of course, we appreciate you. So if you're not familiar with Table Talks, here's our old format. We normally, before we talk about the episode, we do some hot takes, or we talk about some theater topics and things in the news. Obviously, the most important thing in theatrical news is what have our panelists been up to since the end of season 1? BroadwayWorld.com front page. What are the Table Talk guys up to? That's what everybody wants to know. Burning questions. Got a call from Variety yesterday. They're like, what's happening? So, pretty famous. But for our first hot take, Miss Katie, what's been going on with you since our hiatus?
Okay, well, let's see. When we wrapped season 1, we were going into the holiday season, and I was in the process of participating as a choral vocalist for a recording for Oh Holy Night from a music director I've worked with in the past down in Springfield, Missouri, who had put it out on Facebook that he wanted to do this as a project on the side and he needed some help. So I was like, well, that'll get me singing and give me purpose. So did that. Spent the holiday break with bonus kid Hannah and my husband and just enjoyed our time together. In the new year, I've just been working on policy work for the Den Theater. We're still not open. We don't know when it's happening yet, but hopefully no later than the fall of this year will we be open again. I've been acting as a community advisor position for a theater out of Evanston, Illinois right now. One of my colleagues at the Den is their artistic director right now, and they're doing their policy work for anti-racism and anti-bias, all that stuff. So he needed a sounding board, and his board is working on those policies. So he's brought me in as a community advisor kind of situation on that, since we're doing the same kind of thing at our institution with the Den. So that's good. Been taking some sociology theory classes on audit online. That's been fun. And most recently, I have been exploring how to become an intimacy director choreographer. So I have a little bit more about that later on in the episode and the importance of that work, but that's been me.
That's awesome. Boop. See, now this is real clunky. There we go. We're back to the view of everybody. It's been a little while since I did camera work, everyone, so you got to forgive me. Akira, what have you been up to since the break?
Yeah, so the first beginning of this year, actually my grandma passed away because of COVID. So that was tough time for all of our family and all that things. But I was okay. I think my mom was a little bit more shocked because it's her mom and my grandma. So that was tough, but it was okay. Then I am trying kind of pageant thing. I think it's called Miss Japan. So I'm trying something because we don't have any stage jobs right now. So I'm like, but I just have to do something. So that's what I'm doing right now. Yeah. And I booked flight ticket going back to New York on May 5th. So that's what I'm excited about.
That's awesome, Akira. Also, if you want interview coaching for your pageant.
Yes. So I was like, okay. So okay. So I have to submit like YouTube links talking about myself or introducing myself. And I was saying like, because reason why I was interested in pageant is there person I really respect and she was doing pageant and she told me pageant taught her lots of things and it's good. So that's why I wanted to try. So I was like, okay, I have to talk to her to help me out.
Oh, I love that. I would be happy to. That's so cool. Okay. We're going to do another Zoom call, just me and Akira. It will not be a bonus episode. Y'all aren't invited. It's just us. But yeah, we should set something up. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. Okay, I'm fine. It's going to be great. I'm good.
Yay.
Yeah, it does. It has a lot of like positive effects when you have to prepare yourself to present who you are and say, you know what, I'm unabashedly me. This is who I am. This is what I do. And, it's not really about the end result. It's about the experience of doing it. And I think it's a valuable experience for people to have. It's nice to like get a sparkly hat, but it's not about the sparkly hat. Oh, that's fun. Okay. Well, you guys didn't ask, but since a hiatus, I actually attended a wedding over the break. Ryan's sister got married and it was the beginning of March. So it's only been a little bit over a week, but they had the ceremony outside. They had the reception in their home. It was a limited guest list. Everybody was COVID tested. Here in Elkhart County, when you go for one of the state tests, it's crazy. They not only give you the rapid test, but they also give you like the long-term test, and they test you for the flu. So I was like, I had all these tests and all these test results. I was like, I'm healthy. So we went to that wedding, and it was nice to sort of have a little bit of normalcy, to like see people we haven't seen in a year. So that was really really fulfilling to sort of be back with family. And I think that's one of the things that we've learned over the last year is the value of our relationships, not just with our family, but with our friends, and how you put up these barriers that are like, oh, I don't want to bother so-and-so or whatever. No, but you should just bother people. Like, call them, Zoom with them. Like, yeah. So I think that's one of those things. But we had a good holiday, stayed home, watched movies. I made all kinds of cookies, gluten-free cookies, and for the first time I made those like little wreaths out of cornflakes with the red hots. Have you had those? Oh, they're very good. They're very good. I'll make a batch. It's not the season for it anymore, but I'll make a batch and maybe mail them to you guys because they're delicious. But they look like little Rice Krispie treat wreaths. Those are like the big events over the hiatus. I made a cookie. I went to a wedding. So, lots of stuff. Things have been going great at the Goshen Theater. We've established our dates for Goshen Theater Drama Club. I had a meeting with Goshen New Kiwanis last week. I talked to them about all the updates and what we're planning to do for this coming year. I'm going to be talking to staff here coming up in the next bit. Akira, you're going to be in the country, so we should have a chat. I love that. So yeah, the things have been going really well. And I think we've got some neat innovations and fun stuff that we want to do. It's just all about getting it together and figuring it out. And Miss Katie, we should have a meeting next week. But that's the stuff. And the theater's beautiful. We've had some private events and parties, and it looks like we're going to be having a very small, limited seating public event on the 3rd of April, hopefully. TBD, more to come on that. And we'll have a small curated event on April 9th. So like we're going to start having more programming happening in the theater because that's our community purpose. So we're trying to fulfill our community purpose in a safe, responsible way and move forward out of this period of stasis. We're going to, like our little chrysalis, our little butterfly, it's going to open up. We're just going to poke one little wing out for now. We're not like leaping out of our chrysalis and unfurling our wings. We're going like boop, just one little wing, just testing it out. And then if we can always boop back in if we want to, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. You guys probably noticed that we don't have Randa, we don't have Paul, we don't have Molly today, but they said they might be able to be here. So if they're able to pop in, we will greet them with open arms when they arrive, and we'll grill them about what happened during their hiatus as well. So topic of today's episode is these collegiate experiences that we have had, things that helped us transition into better performers, things that may have not been helpful, but that taught us something about ourselves. And, you know, it's also, I feel like some of the things that you guys benefit most from are the things that we didn't necessarily do perfectly. So I have a couple of those things. I would like my failures to be your successes. So we'll talk about that stuff as we go along. I think we're going to start with Akira. Akira, talk to us a little bit about like an experience that you had in your collegiate program, either like good or bad, however you perceived it, but something that really was about a professor interacting with you in a helpful way, but like a learning moment. Like, talk to us.
Yeah. Okay. So, as you know, I am not American, so I'm not native in English. So I had to take like English pronunciation class, and it starts from like just a conversational class for international student, but I have to sing in English too. So we have to take like pronunciation in singing English class too. So, and my pronunciation was bad and still not the perfect, but whatever. So one class we had to take. First, we only international student takes like a level 1 class or something, and then we move on to level 2. During level 1 class, I got pissed during the class to the professor. He wasn't doing anything wrong or anything, but I was just like too much information and I just couldn't take all the direction at the same time. Like I am trying to fix as much as possible in my pronunciation, but I just cannot get it in the day perfectly. And that was happening for like all through the semester. And that was stressing me out. So one time in the middle of the class, I just stood up and I said, I'm sorry, I have to leave. I'm in a bad situation. I'm just not in the mood and I can't take your class right now. Let me leave. I'm sorry. It's my fault. And I just left the class. Then I didn't think it's bad or anything. I was just like, I didn't want to be mean to my professor. I just don't want to be like not nice to my professor too. But I just couldn't take it at the time. So I left during the class and it was a big thing in university, I think. So like all the music major students were like, are you okay? I heard you left during the class. And I'm like, yes, I think we are okay right now. So that was one thing happened. And I think I learned from there. You can leave class anytime you want if you don't feel you are comfortable. It's okay, it's your right. I think it's taboo for most of university students, and they were like, we can't do that. What are you talking about? But you can. It's okay. And after that, even my professor and our relationship wasn't bad. it's even more like I opened my mind so the professor could understand how much I can take, how much I cannot take. So I think that was good.
Yeah, you expressed a boundary. I think that's really important if you're butting up against something to express to somebody, hey, this is a boundary for me. Like I had a weird thing happen once in a ballet class where we were working on turnout, and for whatever reason, and I had ballet teachers like try to encourage my turnout before, but for whatever reason with this professor in this moment, I was close to a breaking point somewhere because college is so hard. It is so hard to work on yourself and work on your art and work on your craft all 24/7 for 4 straight years. But she like tried to do a stretch with me, and the stretch like activated something, and I just started crying. You never know when something is going to happen like that, and you feel like unprofessional, which is so stupid because you are paying that professor to teach you something. Like if I was taking a knitting class and I felt like I didn't like right now, and I was like, oh, I'm not really getting what I need out of this, and I really would like to go have a wedge of cheese and snuggle my dog, I would not feel any qualms about going to my house and eating cheese and snuggling with my dog. But somehow in college, you feel like, oh, this is unprofessional. Like, no, you have the freedom to do that. Like, you have the ability to do it. That's really brave. It was really brave of you to be like, I'm expressing a boundary and I am leaving. It's so smart. I would never have the courage to do that. I literally just wept through the rest of the ballet class. I was like, just quietly crying.
Aww.
It was silly, but you are stronger than I. Yeah.
Well, probably I didn't like the class, but whatever. I'm leaving. Bye.
That's hilarious. What do you think, Katie?
I love that, Akira, first of all. So I'm going to speak to like things that people who are plus size actors tend to deal with in their programs. And I will preface this by number one, saying that I love my collegiate program, like changed my life as a whole. They put me on the track for success. They gave me the tools I needed. My professors were always supportive. With that said, they're an institution for an industry that falls short in a lot of ways, and they are part of that cycle. And so they fall short too. I'm encouraged to see them doing the work to not fall short of those things anymore. But yeah, so let me preface that with, I would go back in a heartbeat. I love my program, but let's dive in. So a lot of programs you walk in, and if you're a plus size actor, I mean, even 15 pounds over what they deem as an ingenue, in these cookie cutter programs, you're told you got to lose weight or you got to gain weight to fit a type, right? You have to fit one or the other. There's no in between. Yes, Akira, yes, punch them in the face. No, violence is bad. Okay, maybe a little. Okay, anyway, no. So I was very lucky that my program never did that to me. None of my acting faculty, none of my dance faculty, no one ever came to me and said, Katie, to make it in this business, you're going to have to lose a bunch of weight. Or Katie, to make it in this business, you need to gain some more weight. That was never a discussion I had with a professor, and I cannot thank them enough that they never did that to me. With that said, I would say that there is coded language in our institutions that people use that still conveys that thought process where my body is not enough on stage the way it is. So things like, you're a character actress, or you're going to have to age into your roles. You're the mom, you're the best friend, whatever it is. Those are all stereotypes, right? Typecasting, we've all heard about it. Now in my program, we talked about type, understanding your type, not being pigeonholed and trying to fight back against your type. But we also learned that the industry standard is these types. And it was reinforced in a lot of ways. For instance, the shows you pick in your institutions. If you're picking shows with people who are in their 40s, guess who gets to play the 40-year-old mom? Me. Or guess who plays the grandma or the old crazy lady? Me. I don't get to play the ingenue. I don't get the skill factor of learning how to be the ingenue on stage, learning how to be that love interest on stage. So that's a huge thing. And so how do we mitigate that? Well, we look at what you're choosing for your shows. Number one, choose things that are appropriate for your students at every age level as much as possible. And second of all, make sure you're not buying into the types. If there's an ingenue on stage, don't just think of the typical ingenue. Everybody is an ingenue in their story. I know what it takes to be an ingenue because in real life, I am the ingenue of my story. There's a reason why we sit in the audience and we identify with the ingenue, the leads, the love interest. It's because we all live that need and that feeling at some point in time. We all want to be loved. We all want to experience those things. So we all know what it takes to play that part because we all play it in our mind every day. So it's not a stretch for me to play those roles. Give me a chance. So I would say that there was coded language that needs to be dismantled, and it's part of everything when it comes to this industry. And we have to, as individual institutions and organizations, make sure that we're not buying into that. And we're calling it out when we see it kind of situation and encouraging other institutions to not buy into that. I would
Katie,
say
one little thing really
Yes.
quickly. There's a whole movement right now toward identity conscious casting, which I think is a step in the correct direction. And until we have like narratives that are not resting on tropes about like what a person in love looks like or what an angry person looks like or what a mom looks like, until we sort of dismantle these types and have narratives that don't have anything to do with that, we have to do this identity conscious casting. And I heard some interesting statistics yesterday. So I think it was 2017 or 2018 on Broadway, 40% of actors on Broadway in Broadway shows were people of color, which is great, right? The percentage of minorities in New York City, that's edging closer to the demographics of New York, and it's edging closer to the demographics of the population of equity actors in New York, though the majority of equity actors in New York City are white. There's a number of reasons for that. We could talk about the 3 generations out of poverty rule as being one of the factors, and that there's a lack of opportunities for people of color. Those are whole other episodes that we could do. Like we could do entire seasons on that issue. But of that 40% that were people of color, only 9.6% was non-traditional identity conscious casting. So Akira, you look a little confused. So I'm going to say, just for everybody, identity conscious casting is unless the character is, there's something about the character where they have to be a particular thing, like Tall Jimmy. If you have someone named Tall Jimmy and it's part of his character that he's hitting his head on rafters, then you have to cast a tall person to play Tall Jimmy. If he's Jimmy, then there's nothing about his physical body. You are open and encouraged by Actors Equity to do what's called identity conscious casting, where you're consciously making a decision to try to see these characters not in your default body type, which for most people in the United States, their default body is like a female who's 5'6", who's size 6, who's white with blonde or brown hair. Like everybody has a default body in their head that's like, this is what a person looks like. You try to get, as a casting director, out of the idea of this default body and try to see people that reflect the actual world instead of what your preconceived notion of what a person is. So the sad thing about this non-traditional casting angle is that there are all these characters on Broadway where race, ability, like body type, all of these things have nothing to do with the character. But the vast majority of the time, those are being cast as white people. Only 9.6% of them are people of color. So when it's not a factor, we're still defaulting 90% of the time to casting white people. And obviously, I'm pretty sure that 9.6% is Hamilton. You know, like we're defaulting to the idea that the default person is a white, able-bodied, like person, and that's it. And yeah, so we're moving forward. I love that 40%. We have a diversity percentage that's inching closer to what it is, but we're not limited. We don't just have to cast people in traditional roles where like, oh, we're going to definitely cast an African American actor to play this African American character, where their African American identity is 100% baked into the character. Like, of course you are. And it's good that those stories are being told. However, there's still a problem. Sorry, I thought that was interesting and related to what you were talking about. And I just I was on this train yesterday, so I apologize. Detour over. It's a table talk tradition. Paul's not here, so I had to ramble. Love you guys. Katie, back to you in the studio.
I appreciate that. I mean, yes, all of that. The next thing that I had on my list to talk about was basically harkening back to what Akira already talked about, was creating boundaries for yourself. And how do we as educators and institutions make sure that we, number one, give language to our students so that they are able to create boundaries for themselves, but also to make sure that we as educators and institutions are respecting those boundaries without asking questions. We need to be able to create safe, brave spaces for our students, because acting is about exploring hard topics. We have to be emotional warriors. That is part of it. However, you never, ever, ever have to do anything that makes you feel uncomfortable or unsafe. That can be physical, it can be emotional. It could be you're triggered by something someone says in a joking manner on stage. And one of the things that I learned in a quick workshop that I took, just to give me like the baseline of where to get started at, one of the things she's doing right now is analyzing how she takes her intimacy director work and transfers it into educational institutions right now. And it was great to see my old professor in that workshop asking questions, because one of the things that I remember in school was, I think it was like my second acting class. So it would have been my freshman year, second semester. And there was a scene I was given with a scene partner in my class, and there was a kiss involved with it. We didn't think twice about it. We know that we are supposed to talk to each other in a rehearsal space. We know that we're supposed to ask for consent before we touch one another. That's something that our institution always stressed, was getting consent from your scene partner or from a reader in the room during an audition. But we never thought twice about it. We knew it was expected that we do the kiss. First showing in class, we do it. We go to get our critique from our classmates and our professor, and the first words out of her mouth were huge amounts of praises for us going for the kiss right off the bat, for not hesitating, just doing it, right? It was a huge praise. I mentioned this because there was another section of the same class, and one of my friends was doing the exact same scene as me, and they chose not to do the kiss in their first showing for class. And the reaction they got from the same professor was harsh, because they didn't go for that kiss. Now, it's not necessarily that they weren't planning on doing it for final showing. They just hadn't worked on it, I think, at the time. But if it had been a problem of boundaries, one of them felt uncomfortable doing that, and they had discussed that as a group, what that professor did in that moment was show that boundaries don't matter to us. In my mind, I was not there to witness this conversation, but I heard it from my friend later. And to me, as the student doing the same scene, it made me so glad that I did the kiss. And I would never, ever from then on out question that to be a professional, I had to do that kiss. It wasn't about my boundaries. It wasn't about what made me comfortable. It was about getting the grade, because I'm a very self-conscious student for grades, always have been. So if it's a matter of getting the grade or setting a boundary for myself, I'm going to go for the grade. And I think a lot of students will too. So Akira, the fact that your classmates were so concerned about you and could not fathom walking out of that class, I think that's a thing that is pretty standard in most institutions, that I would have never thought of walking out of a class. Had someone crossed a boundary with me, I probably wouldn't have even discussed it at the time. I was a young artist. Those were my first impressions of what is expected of me in a professional setting. They should have been better moments where the boundary was accepted or whatever. Had the professor asked about it and said, have you guys discussed the kiss yet? Do you guys need help working out how to do it? Do you guys, if it's an uncomfortability thing, there are so many ways you can fake a kiss on stage without ever actually kissing another human. So many ways. Had the professor addressed it that way, as like, let's figure out how we address this in this moment. If this is a boundary for you, like, let's figure out the choreography for it so it's not an issue anymore. But that's not how it was addressed. And it very much instilled in us that this is what's expected. Don't question it. Unfortunately. And I know that that professor would never, ever maliciously do that. I know she believes in boundaries, but in that moment, she wasn't thinking. She fell into the industry standard expectation. So we as institutions, we need to have policies in place that protect our students. We as teaching artists and teaching professionals, we need to be able to recognize the signs in our students, because they're young and they may not have the language. They may not even feel comfortable bringing up the issue, but there is one. So we need to learn how to recognize body language on them and understand this is making them uncomfortable. How can we fix that? If they're not speaking up for themselves, you have to advocate for themselves, especially in our position with such young actors as our students. But anyway, that's my ramble. There we go.
You know, the posts online, I'm going to ask both of you, Akira and Katie, you know, those posts online that are like, am I the jerk? They don't say jerk, but I'm not going to say the thing that they say. But there's the am I the jerk posts. I have an am I the jerk question. Because, you know, I self-reflect quite a lot about like my history as an educator and my history as a director and my history as a producer. Like, what kind of material am I doing? How am I like dismantling the things that I disagree with? And when have I been in a position to reaffirm things I disagree with? Like, I think about these things all the time, right? But I did a show back in 2013, and there was a character, and we can discuss the appropriateness or inappropriateness of this thing, but as a joke in the curtain call, two of the characters are shown to be a couple, and it's two women. Like, it's kind of a punchline where like, oh, this person ended up leaving her husband and found love with this other person. And it's a surprise. Like, they don't treat it like the relationship itself is a joke, but they treat it like, oh, this is like a funny thing. And then those two characters kiss. It was never my intention to have the two women actually kiss each other. I knew both of them self-identified as women, and I knew both of them had a sexuality more toward the straight side of the spectrum, and didn't even want to deal with like, hey, we're going to get comfortable kissing someone of the same gender for a curtain call joke. Like, I didn't think that it was appropriate or necessary. But everybody involved had read the script, knew that the thing was there, whether or not they agreed with it or disagreed with it. And this was not something that could be changed or written out. It was something that was there and had to be there. So we got to the day where we are blocking the curtain call. You know me, I made it as simple as possible so that everybody could like do it. And I was like, all right, ladies, so here's the joke. Here's how I would like to deal with this issue. I don't want the two of you to kiss, but I would like to have a big fake theatrical dip kiss. So Jackie, I want you to literally put your hand over your mouth. I want you to put your hand over your mouth, and you guys are going to do like a big dip, and you'll turn away and even make it look like you put your hand over your mouth. Like, I don't want there to be any question, but make it a big fake thing. Put your hand over your mouth, do the big dip, and come up and put a big mwah on it. And then like look at each other lovingly, and then cross left, and then join the line dance that everybody's doing behind you. And that like you guys will finish your narration. You'll be beautiful. You'll cross left. It'll be great. And the young actress who was playing this sort of secondary character said she didn't want to do it. And I was like, okay, well, what would make you comfortable? And she's like, my family are conservative Christians. There is nothing about this that I'm comfortable with, even faking it. I don't want, like, she's like, a handshake would be what would make me comfortable. And I was so angry. And my mental justifications for my anger were, she's read the script. She knew that this was there. She knew it was a piece of it. I didn't have the expectation that they were actually going to do the thing, but she was still uncomfortable about the perception of her family and the audience that she might have an alternative sexuality. So I also found that a little offensive. So I was mad that like that had happened, that like that this was an issue, that it was something that she was expressing as a boundary. And I was so like, it was not the time. It felt like it was an inappropriate time to talk about it. It felt like there were so many layers to it. And I remember literally like I was like, we'll talk about it later. We get to a point, she comes up to me afterwards. She's like, I don't think that this is an appropriate thing to do. And I was like, you're really lucky that I can't fire you. Because literally, if I could cast somebody else in this role who would actually be willing to do this thing that is an integral part of this plot moment, it's silly, but it's this thing that is integral to this plot. If I could find somebody that was willing to do it, I would replace you right now. I was like, I like you. I think you're doing a great job, but this is a part of it. And if this was an issue, it should have been expressed earlier. And she said, well, I was afraid of that, which is why I didn't say anything. So now I'm here. I moved in, we're into rehearsal, and we're blocking the curtain call. So the show's done. She's like, I was afraid I would lose my job if I said anything earlier. And like, I look back on that and I'm like, okay, so this is someone who was expressing a boundary, healthy or unhealthy, whatever her issues with it were. Like, she was expressing a boundary, and I had a response myself. I probably outwardly and inwardly, because I can't hide anything from you people. That was, I don't know if it was appropriate or if it wasn't. I think it's gray, hopefully I'm not just a jerk, but like, I think it's a gray area. Could I have handled it more gracefully? Probably, but am I the jerk? That's my question.
So you're right. I think it's a complicated thing. I think had you like thrown a fit in rehearsal instead of like having a private conversation with her, I definitely would have considered you definitively in the wrong. But that's not what you did. You had a private conversation. With that said, you're right. She was expressing a boundary. However, she should have expressed it before she accepted the role. If it was an integral part of the story, if it was going to be a problem for her, she knew ahead of time that
it was 9 to 5. It was 9 to 5.
Well, and she knew before she even accepted the role that it was going to be a problem for her, is what it sounds like. So do I think you're in the wrong for like telling her that she's acting unprofessional? No. Do I think she's young? Yes. And maybe, obviously she was afraid to discuss it. So how do we figure out a way to mitigate that? Well, we make it a standard to talk at the very beginning of the process when you're auditioning about the things that are going to be in the script. What makes you comfortable? What makes you uncomfortable? Where are your boundaries? How can we mitigate that? If you were cast in this role, what would your boundaries be? And are those boundaries we're willing as the director, the artistic side, and the playwright, are we willing to accept that boundary? Or are we going to look for someone who has a different boundary setting? I don't know the answer. I've not done the trainings. I don't know how to best handle it. I do think that the fact that you didn't blow up in rehearsal is the first step, because I think she took you by surprise. I think you probably handled it to the best of your abilities at that point in time.
I was not very nice. You know,
well,
me.
Grace aside, in the moment, pulling her aside was the first step. So I don't know.
She also brought it up in front of everybody. Like literally the entire cast was lined up there. And that's the moment. I was like.
And it's probably last day of the rehearsal. Everyone was like piling up our tiredness and all the pressure like piled up. And like, I don't want to do this. It's like.
We're so close. We're so close. Yeah. That was it. That was totally it. It's not forgivable. It's not like I don't look back and go, gosh, that was my best moment.
Yeah. But the hope is that we figure out ways that doesn't happen again, that we get to that far into the rehearsal before there's words spoken that there's a problem.
Right.
Like what about the situation made her feel so uncomfortable to come and talk to you before then? Was it just simply she was afraid of losing her job because the industry standard is to accept anything and everything?
Yes.
In which case, let's go back to the institutions that are teaching these students that they have no right to stand up for themselves at the beginning.
Right.
They have no right to advocate for themselves at the beginning. And I think that it's going to start with programs like ours, when they are younger, and giving them that language for when they do go to interview and audition for those institutions, they can ask the right questions. Hey, what's your policy on this? If I were to do this, what would happen?
Right.
If I had this boundary and I expressed it in class and I had to leave because it's a boundary and I need time and space to deal with it,
Yeah.
is that going to affect my grade? Or are you going to give me the grace to deal with that on my own and support me in that endeavor to create a brave space so that I feel comfortable coming back and doing more work with you? Or are you going to enforce those industry standards that we are trying so hard to dismantle?
Yeah. I think it's interesting too that like anything can be a trigger. So you can't, like, as a program, you can't be like, we're getting rid of all triggers. No one will ever be triggered. Do you guys watch West Wing? There is an episode of West Wing where one of the characters has, he gets shot in the line of duty. So like, because it's about the president. So someone tries, someone's going to shoot the president, right? And we just got flagged by the NSA. Table talk flagged. So in this episode of West Wing, one of the characters gets shot and he recovers and everything's fine. You know, it's a Thursday night drama show from the 1990s and early 2000s. So, but the next Christmas episode, he's experiencing PTSD and they can't get to the root of it because he has this trauma. And of course, he's like a little bit toxic masculine, is trying to just power through things. But they figure out that because when he was shot, there were sirens, his brain somehow is making music into like the music is triggering a PTSD response, like a literal trigger. Not like triggers a memory or makes me feel uncomfortable kind of trigger, like a PTSD trigger. So you never know. You never know what might set somebody into, like, not necessarily a flashback, but into a trauma response. Chocolate chip cookies. I had a friend who once choked on a chocolate chip cookie and would experience anxiety upon seeing people eating a chocolate chip cookie. That's like, you can't control that as a program. Like, you can't say, oh, we're going to get rid of all chocolate chip cookies and all music. Like, no, you can't predict what it's going to be. But what you can do is give your students the tools to say, hey, I got to step out for a second because I'm feeling like this is a boundary. I think there is, though, on the part of students, sometimes overcorrection occasionally, and we have to also be forgiving of the instances of overcorrection. So I can think of times when people have said things that were, I'm feeling this way, and maybe it's a small feeling. Well, as artists, though, sometimes we do need to explore being uncomfortable, and exploring being uncomfortable in a safe space is really transformative as an artist. So we have to also, subtle difference, be willing to explore those uncomfortable places in a safe way with people and professors and other students in an environment where we feel good about it. Like, don't keep all of those things to yourself, because our art is about sharing and creating those empathetic moments. So you got to forgive the overcorrection. Your impulse is going to be to never be uncomfortable. But you got to find ways to be uncomfortable and explore your boundaries, because that's what college is about. But there's ways to do it well and ways to do it poorly. And I think, Akira, your professor allowing you to leave and not making a big to do about it was probably the best way to handle that situation.
I think he was professional as a professor too.
Yeah.
Like, I think he even said sorry to me. Like, I went to his office after the class because I felt bad too. Like, I couldn't express my feeling that well at that time because I was like overwhelming. So I was like, hey, I'm sorry. It wasn't your fault or anything. I just couldn't take it. But
Yeah.
So yeah.
I think it's tough. And I think you're learning to be an adult when you're in college. And for our students, I know that some of you are exploring the programs that you want to be a part of. You're exploring like maybe what you'd like your major to be. And I know some of our watchers are also people who are in collegiate programs or people who are in high school who are looking at what they want to do. I think it's good to remember when you're selecting your program or when you're in college that you are the consumer, the person being educated. You have the power to say, you know what? I want to go to this program because they take care of my needs in this way. I was accepted to a couple of schools, not every school I auditioned for, certainly, but I was accepted to a few. And I'm really glad I ended up at Millikan because Millikan at that time was all about your individual skills as an artist and what you could do and like unlocking the different things about you that you might not even know by exploring a diverse array of not just musical theater, but theater and history and all of it. Like, it was a great program. I probably didn't live it to its fullest when I was in it, but I'm glad I was there because it told me that I didn't need to be one particular thing and that there wasn't one definition of success. So it's you're interviewing your school. The school, the place that you select, isn't just about the name of it. Nobody cares. I'm telling you, as a casting director, nobody cares what school you went to. Like, if I see Juilliard, sometimes I'm like, ooh, but that's all it's going to get you is a, oh, it's not going to get you cast. It's not going to get you anything. Like, neat. That's it. So, unless I know somebody or you went to my school, doesn't matter. So, I think it's important to remember that you are the person that is in charge of where you go to school. Yeah, there's a gatekeeper that says this is the school you're going to get into or whatever. We think you're a good fit for our program, but you get to pick. You get to choose where your dollars go, and those dollars are powerful. So don't forget your power in this interaction. And I think that's like the number one thing to take away from today, maybe, is don't give your power away because you think that the other people, there's a power dynamic at play where your professors are in charge of you. They're not. You're still in charge of yourself. And they have a lot to tell you. You have a lot to learn from them. Something's good, something's bad, but somewhat not to do, somewhat to do. But yeah, you're there to learn from them. And I think that's important. Any final thoughts, Miss Katie?
Just if you're one of those brave souls like Akira that is good at setting boundaries for yourself, and you have someone that you're working with or a friend who's not so great, and you recognize that they're having a hard time in a moment at rehearsal or whatever, you can advocate for them. You have that permission. It's supposed to be a collaboration. If you don't feel comfortable stopping rehearsal in the middle of it and asking them if they're okay, wait until they come off stage, ask them, check in on them, and then ask them if there's anything you can do. Can you talk to the director on their behalf if they're too afraid? Can you do something to help them? Or maybe just, can I be there to be a witness for when you're doing this scene? Would that make you feel more comfortable? Something like that. Just be an advocate for yourself and be an advocate for others as much as possible.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's important to say, we're exploring all these boundaries together and I'm here. You know what? Nobody builds toughness through trauma. Trauma doesn't make you tough. So I think that's important. But, you can develop your toughness with your team and get to that place. Akira, final thoughts?
Yeah. Even you fail in college doesn't give you a job. And reason why you go to college is you want to be an actor or something. To be an actor, you got to get a job as an actor, but college doesn't give you a job. So if you don't feel you fit in college, that's okay, because college doesn't give you a job anyway.
It doesn't mean anything.
Nothing. So do what you like, do what you feel it's right. It doesn't have to be society says right, parents says right, or professor says right. If it's right for you, it's right.
One of the girls that I went to school with, her name's Carrie Anderson. She didn't really get cast in a lot of the main stage leads. I did a show with her called Sir Patient Fancy. It was in the Jarson Kaplan Theater, the small venue at Millikan. And she was great. She played a pants role. She was awesome. She did wonderfully. And she's real gifted. And I don't remember if the year after I was there, she ended up doing any of the like big main stage shows in the big theater or whatever, but it's not as if she was like the default person to get all the parts. Like, she was in the smaller venue doing a show with me, whatever. She is now the longest running Sophie in Mamma Mia. And she, I think, is maybe the longest running Kate Monster in Avenue Q. So she's Broadway lady, and the fact is that her collegiate program and the fact that she played this minor pants role in this smaller show and she didn't get cast in, like, I think it was Pippin, the big musical everybody wanted to do. She didn't get cast in the big show. It had nothing to do with whether or not she was going to be successful in her career. She is undoubtedly successful. And like, they hold her up all the time as this person. Oh, these are some of our students who've been on Broadway. Like, great. They weren't just giving her all the parts when she was in school. It had nothing to do with it. So you never know. You never know. Oh, well, this is great. Again, we always boil down to self-advocacy here on Goshen Theater Drama Club Table Talks. I feel like we should get some written resources out to you guys, and maybe a couple of guides, maybe some blog posts about other ways that you can self-advocate or ways that you can practice self-advocacy in small ways, because it's hard. It's hard to do even in small ways. So you want to like flex those muscles. You wouldn't go from your couch to the Mr. Universe competition where you're trying to like the weighty lifty thing, sports weighty thing. You wouldn't do that. You would injure yourself, whatever it's called. You wouldn't do that. You've got to like start with little weights. So if you need little tiny weights to build up your self-advocacy muscles, it's a good metaphor, Katie. Don't look at me like that.
I would never judge your sports knowledge
It's brilliant.
or lack.
We all know I don't know anything. So we'll probably get some resources together for you guys. And also, you know, it's okay to feel your feelings, but be tough, advocate for yourself, and advocate for your friends. I think it's maybe the most important takeaway is like, if you see something happening with someone else, don't be scared to talk to them and say, hey, I support and love you. And speaking of, I support and love you, Katie Barnes and Akira Watanabe. You guys are awesome. Thank you for being here at Goshen Theater Drama Club Table Talks today.
Love you too.
It's a great season 2 so far with the dream team. We don't know where all those other yahoos are. We'll figure it out.
They're off the team. Probation. All of them.
Probation. 1 week probation. They're not allowed to tape an episode of Table Talk until Friday. They are suspended.
Deal with the bull, you get the horns. You know what I'm saying?
Whoa. Amazing. So I promised you guys that we would be announcing the dates for the summer of 2021 Goshen Theater Drama Club in-person, possible, partial online program. We're going to be ironing out those details, but I'm looking at the calendar right now. It is June 28th to July. June 28th to July 17th. The final performance will be on the 17th of July. That is what we're going to do. We have some amazing stuff planned, design work, history. You know us. We're going to be talking about math in a fun way. We're going to actually be in the venue. So that's going to be very cool. And hopefully we'll have some special guests and some other really interesting stuff for you guys. We are talking about possibly doing a partial online program for those of you who might be away on vacations. July 4th is over our period of time that we have drama club as usual. So we'll maybe have some online resources for you guys so that even if you go on vacation, you can have some fun stuff to do. But we're hoping to have the program in person for the most part. You know, we have our lovely alley space, the ballroom. We can social distance. We have face masks. It's going to be great. So more news about that will roll out as we get closer to the summer, and registrations will be opening in the next couple of weeks, which is very exciting. But that is our episode for today. Thank you for joining us. It has been great to be back for season 2, episode 1. I can't believe it. Season 2. Akira. That's season 2, episode 2. That's the next episode. Awesome. As always, thank you to Goshen Noon Kiwanis for supporting Goshen Theater Drama Club. We could not do our work without you guys. Thank you guys so much for being here. Katie, Akira, I know it's like 1 a.m. now, so you probably need to go to bed. Katie, I know it's noon, so you probably want to get some lunch, you know? Here it is. So we're going to sign off for now. We will see you guys next week. Thank you so much for tuning in, and bye-bye.
Bye.